Alone at 30,000 feet. The devastating truth the billionaire CEO never told about family secrets. The plane soared like a metal bird, but in that moment, it felt more like a coffin. Inside, the whispers were thick with trepidation. Everyone knew that Nathan Hayes, the billionaire CEO renowned for his immaculate reputation, was in the seat just a few rows ahead. But today, the opulent confines of the first-class cabin seemed charged with an electric tension, as if a storm was brewing. Inside Nathan's mind, tumult roared louder than the aircraft's engines. The relentless ticking of the clock mirrored the chaos of his life, obscuring the air of prestige he had crafted so carefully. His past clawed at him like a phantom, reeling out a twisted tapestry of secrets that he had fought to bury. There was the unexplained disappearance of his brother, a shadow lurking behind every board meeting, every public appearance. The scandal that had split their family was never something Nathan wanted to talk about. Yet as the plane cruised through turbulent skies, his thoughts were louder than the thunder rumbling outside. A low murmur spread through the passengers, eyes darting nervously toward Nathan. What was hidden behind those perfectly polished features? Rumors had whirled like autumn leaves in a gusty wind, tales of betrayal, family feuds, heartbreaking decisions that shattered bonds. Everyone watched, trying to decipher the man they barely knew. He was more than a CEO, he was a locked box, a tantalizing enigma of wealth and misery. Suddenly, the cabin lights flickered. Gasps filled the air, and Nathan's heart raced, a lump forming in his throat as he stared out the window. Was it merely turbulence? Or was there an unseen force at work, pushing the plane into a reckoning? A shiver skittered down his spine, and the overhead compartments clanged ominously, rattling the facade he had carefully constructed. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the plane struggled against the unseen forces, Nathan's mind flashed back to that fateful night when his brother vanished, an event forever etched into his psyche, shaped like the clouds they sliced through. Each electric jolt of the plane reminded him of the day his life twisted into this labyrinth of guilt and shadows. What if this flight was doomed to carry him toward the truth he buried deep down? What if fate was about to unravel everything? The clock continued to tick relentlessly. Secrets were no longer just whispers. They were screaming, begging to break free. As turbulence clamped down and the storm roared, a question hung in the air. Would the flight land safely, or would Nathan face the ghosts of his family as past? The entire cabin swayed violently, and a collective gasp erupted from the passengers as the plane dipped sharply. Nathan gripped the armrests with white-knuckled intensity, his heart pounding like a war drum. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, and flashes of panic sparkled in the eyes of his fellow travelers. One woman across the aisle clutched her child, trembling, whispering words of comfort that hung weakly in the air like a fragile thread about to snap. With every drop and rise, Nathan's thoughts skidded wildly. He fought against the images of his brother that crept back into his mind. Jesse's bright smile, their childhood, all the moments they shared. The brother he lost, the truth he could never face. If this flight truly was a reckoning, would it bring up more than just turbulence? Would it strip away the layers of pretense, exposing everything that lay dormant within him? Then, a creaking sound broke through the chaos, sending a fresh wave of terror through the cabin. An attendant rushed down the aisle, her calm demeanor barely masking her obvious tension. "Please remain seated. We're experiencing some unexpected turbulence," she encouraged before biting her lip, her eyes darting nervously. The comfort of her words fell flat against the backdrop of dread. Nathan's throat constricted. He squeezed his eyes shut, not wanting to see the chaos around him, but doing so only unveiled memories sharper than glass, memories that cut deep. How long would he remain chained to the past? A plane crash, a pilot error, the thoughts flickered through his mind, full of the weight of culpability. What if this flight was more than a physical journey? What if it was a spiral dive into everything he'd hidden? Suddenly, the lights went out, plunging the cabin into darkness. A shroud of panic fell over the passengers, like a heavy blanket. Screams erupted in the darkness, and Nathan could hear a child wailing, a deep sense of urgency injecting electric fear into the air. The plane jolted again, this time harder, rattling places deep within. A hand gripped his shoulder, and Nathan's eyes flew open to find the flight attendant there, her face illuminated briefly by the emergency lights that flickered back to life. "Sir!" she shouted over the din, "we need your help." Her eyes held a blend of fear and desperation, flooding him with the realization that everyone on this flight was not just passengers. They were treading on the edge of something far more significant, something that demanded their full attention. What if the physical storm outside mirrored the storm within? As the lights flickered again, joining in chaos with the aircraft's dive, Nathan felt a pulse of something primal. Would he rise to the occasion, or shrink back into the shadows of his hidden truths? The engines roared louder, and Nathan's grip tightened on the seat. The plane pitched one final time, and his resolve began to surface. He was a man molded by pain, loss, and guilt, and perhaps today was the day he would confront it all. A sudden explosion of noise from the cockpit sent the passengers into a frenzy. Had their fears become reality? And then the plane leveled out, just as Nathan's heart raced towards an unknown precipice. The air hung thick with both disbelief and an awakening. In that moment of precarious balance, Nathan felt something shift, something deep inside him that called out to break free. What lay ahead? As the plane stabilized, so did Nathan's breathing, but the fight was not over. How long until they faced the storm, both within and without? Was he truly ready to uncover the truth, or would the memories of his brother drag him down into darkness forever? The cabin was still buzzing with fear, an electric tension that clung to everyone's skin as the emergency lights flickered ominously. Nathan's heart raced. The momentary calm had barely settled before the intercom crackled to life. "This is your captain speaking. We have encountered a technical malfunction, but we are working to resolve the issue. Please remain seated and stay calm." His voice was steady, but Nathan could hear the undercurrent of anxiety. The passengers exchanged glances, uncertainty mirrored in their wide eyes. The woman with the child whispered another quiet reassurance, but it was more for her own comfort than the boy's. "Do you really think we're going to be okay?" A man behind Nathan muttered, his voice shaking. It was clear they were all in the same dark space of dread, trapped inside an aluminum tube miles above the earth. Suddenly, another violent lurch yanked them back, like a double lightning strike. The plane dipped again, screeching through the air with a bone-rattling ferocity. Screams erupted once more, the noise a chaotic wave that crashed over Nathan, pushing him deeper into turmoil. He could feel his breath coming in short gasps. The past he had been so determined to forget seemed to snatch hold of him again, dragging his consciousness back to that terrible day, the day Jesse never came home. "Sir!" The attendant's voice broke through the noise, urgent and commanding. "We need all able-bodied passengers to assist with the evacuation procedures if we lose altitude again. Please, we need to prepare for anything." The word evacuate ricocheted in Nathan's mind, amplifying his panic. His pulse quickened. What if they needed to abandon the plane? Could he bear to risk the chaos of giving in to the fear? Every nerve in his body screamed at him to act, yet his limbs felt heavy, shackled by memories. Clenching his fists, Nathan abruptly stood, the abruptness shocking even him. He strode toward the aisle. The flight attendant was still shouting instructions, trying to remain focused amidst the chaos. Desperation coursed through him. His fear drove him forward. He made eye contact with the woman across the aisle, who still cradled her child tightly. "Help your child, hold on," he called out, hoping to ignite some spirit within her. The little boy's face was buried in her shoulder, but she nodded, if only to reassure Nathan that he wasn't alone in this struggle. As he moved toward the back of the plane, the stench of sweat and fear clung to the air, and Nathan's heart hammered in his chest. Encounters flashed before his eyes: Jesse laughing, their last fight, the call that shattered his world. How could he face anything now without his brother as guiding light? There was a sudden atmosphere shift. A crunching sound echoed through the cabin, as though the plane itself took a deep breath. Nathan's chest tightened. It was a harbinger of something dreadful. Moments later, the cabin lights flicked off again. Not again. Darkness enveloped them like a grave. The emergency lights blinked a desperate red. Barely visible shadows moved in the cramped aisles. The sound of frantic breaths filled the cabin. The plane shuddered, and through the darkness came a voice, one he knew all too well. "You can't outrun it, Nate," it whispered, a ghostly echo that left him paralyzed in disbelief. But the voice belonged to Jesse. "Let go of the past," it urged, the sound growing louder, as if the ghosts were right behind him. "You can't save anyone without saving yourself first." Nathan's skull rang, and the terrifying weight of it all threatened to crush him. Staring into the abyss of his heart, he realized that maybe, just maybe, this flight was the confrontation he had been avoiding all along. The lights flickered back to life, but as Nathan lifted his gaze, he found himself staring into the terrified eyes of his fellow passengers. He wasn't sure if he was ready to let go of the past, or even if he could face what lay ahead, but maybe now he wouldn't have to do it alone. What happened next would demand everything from him, and the stakes had never been higher. Would Nathan find a way to transcend the ghosts of his past before it engulfed him entirely? Nathan blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the haunting echo of his brother's voice. The specter of Jesse loomed large in his heart, casting a shadow over the fear thrumming through the cabin. Faces that had once been strangers now mirrored his own turmoil, panic-stricken, desperate, looking for a way out of this nightmare. "Stay calm," the attendant shouted again, her voice the only solid anchor in the maelstrom. "We need you to form lines and follow evacuation protocol. We may need to do this quickly." But there was a jittering chaos around him, the cramped space filled with a sense of impending doom. Nathan felt the walls closing in. He glared at the exit doors, sensing the danger behind them lay only one decision away. If only he could harness that confusion and turn it into courage. Squeezing past a row of seats, he reached the aft of the cabin where the exit door was looming both a salvation and a threat. Beyond it lay the unforgiving abyss of the skies, but inside the cabin was an even darker place. His heart raced, pumping adrenaline through his veins, yet cold dread clawed at his insides. Suddenly, the plane bucked violently, and Nathan stumbled, barely keeping his balance as a chorus of screams erupted again. From the back of the plane, he heard a loud crash followed by an unsettling silence that draped over them like a heavy blanket. Nathan turned just in time to see a man crumble to the floor, clutching his arm, blood already seeping through his shirt. "Someone help!" a woman cried, her hands trembling as she pointed toward the injured man. "Move!" Nathan shouted, rallying some of the passengers to assist. Fear knotted his stomach, but he couldn't let that stop him. This was no time for weakness. They rushed toward the man, trying to fend off desperation as the plane shook again, sending them reeling. Nathan's instincts kicked in. "We need to stabilize him. Grab shirts, anything. We have to slow the bleeding." Around him, chaos reigned. The woman with the child was lifting her son's shirt, tearing it frantically. Others fumbled through bags, searching for anything that could help. As Nathan worked to soak the makeshift bandage with pressure, he thought of Jesse, and all the times he felt powerless, a lone kid against the overwhelming tide of life. "I won't fail again," he whispered to himself. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows that danced wildly in the cabin. Passengers exchanged terrified looks, sensing something deep and dangerous hovering around them. And then again, the voice, the accusatory whisper of Jesse. "You're always trying to save others, Nate, what about you?" The words clashed with his actions, a brutal reminder of his own failures. But these people, these strangers, depended on him now. He couldn't fail them too. The attendant rushed over. "We're losing altitude. We need to prepare for an emergency landing." Panic swept through the cabin, multiplying as reality crashed in. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest, drowning out the voices around him. He had to act. He looked around the cabin at the faces, their eyes glistening with fear. "We're in this together," he said, his voice steady despite the trembling of his hands. "We have to stick together if we're going to make it out alive." The moment felt fragile, everything hinging on his next words, placing the weight of leadership on his shoulders. Before he could take another breath, a deafening bang reverberated through the plane, throwing them against their seats. Time fractured. The cabin erupted into shrieks and cries. Furniture shifted, and Nathan pressed his palm against the nearest wall to steady himself. "Brace for impact." The captain's voice screamed through the intercom, drowning out the chaos. Panic surged, but Nathan stood firm amongst the wreckage of their hopes. In that moment, he wasn't just carrying his own demons. He breathed in the reality of the present. This was his fight now. The cabin plunged into darkness once more, and through the screams, someone shouted, "What do we do?" But deep down, Nathan knew. It was time to confront what had haunted him for too long. Not only for his flight mates, but to truly let go of his past. As they braced for the unknown, Nathan felt a flicker of resolve. Was it enough? Would they all make it through this together? Or would the ghosts of their past tear them apart before the crash? The moment had come. The plane jolted, pitching wildly, as if it were a mere toy in the hands of some angry child. The darkness swallowed up Nathan and the passengers like a ravenous beast. Their screams became muffled, merging into an echo of panic that clawed at Nathan's heart. He fumbled blindly, feeling for anyone around him. "Anyone!" he shouted, his voice barely rising above the cacophony. The weight of the impending descent pressed against his chest, but he couldn't falter now. Not again. Sudden flashes illuminated the cabin, suffusing the air with a blinding light before plunging them back into darkness. Nathan strained for breath, tasting the cold metal of fear on his tongue. Sounds collided, groans, cries, and the unsettling whimper of the child from earlier. Nathan couldn't let himself think. He had to act. "Get to the exits," he bellowed, forcing himself through the crowd, shoving past people frozen in horror. Each face he brushed was a mirror of uncertainty, reflecting his own turmoil, but Nathan couldn't focus on them. He had to reach that exit door, his beacon of hope in a swirling sea of despair. With determination surging, he rounded one last corner before the exit. The once familiar hiss of the emergency slides filled the air, a mechanical sigh of lifelines thrown into chaos. Instinct kicked in. He reached for the handle, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Wait!" A voice pierced through the panic, and Nathan whipped around to see the attendant, her face stricken with fear, but her eyes firm. "We can't open it yet. We're still too high." "But if we don't listen to me," she pleaded, stepping closer, urgency weaving through her appeal. "We need to wait until we get to a certain level, or we risk being blown out." Nathan felt the walls closing in further. "We don't have time. People are hurt, and the landing gear won't hold if we're too high." Her voice trembled as she pressed her lips together, weighing her decision, as if every second screeched in agony. Frustration boiled in Nathan. Lives were hanging in the balance, and he felt the momentum of chaos threatening to sweep him under. He howled in frustration, a raw anger spilling forth. What do we do then? Just sit here and wait for a crash landing? She stepped back, her face pale. The reality descended upon them like mist. Waiting meant more chances to be trapped in their fates. Nathan could feel Jess's words clawing at him, returning to haunt him through this turmoil. You're always trying to save others. Blood rushed to his head, and for a moment, he wrestled with the ghosts of regret that shadowed him. He refused to be paralyzed this time. With a surge of adrenaline, he turned to those still huddled behind him. You hear that? We're going to survive this together. Hold on and trust each other. The lights flickered again, a desperate reminder of how quickly everything was slipping away. Panic clung to the air, thick and suffocating. But then something shifted among them, a collective inhalation, a fragile bond ignited in the midst of terror. Planes don't crash daily, but they do crash. His pulse raced not out of fear now, but because he felt the faintest flicker of hope. They still had time. Then suddenly, the aircraft pitched sharply, causing a chorus of gasps. The cabin dropped. Every person was jolted upward, some slamming into overhead bins. In that chaotic moment, Nathan was thrown to the ground alongside a fellow passenger. Help me up, the man cried, desperation in his voice. No, Nathan said, urgency consuming him. Get to the exit. They couldn't lose time. They all needed to make the choice together, to risk everything for the chance of survival. As they all scrambled for stability, the cabin lights blared. A flash ignited in Nathan's mind. He could still pull them through. We need to brace ourselves. On the count of 3. And as he prepared to lead them, a siren blared from the cockpit, a chilling wail that reverberated through the cabin. Nathan froze, recognizing the ominous signal. What did that mean for them? 3-2 he started, but the plane lurched once again, lighter this time. As they hurtled downward, panic replaced courage all at once as they fought to hold onto one another. With gravity pulling them into despair, Nathan faced the exit door, where the light shimmered like a distant sanctuary. Would they get through? Would they leap into freedom or fall into doom? Now! He yelled, adrenaline driving every ounce of fear away. The final choice awaited, but as he lunged forward, what awaited them on the other side remained a question only fate could answer. The plane shuddered again, the deafening roar of the siren mixing with the sea of desperation flooding the cabin. Nathan barely had time to react as the world outside twisted into a blur of white clouds and endless blue. He gritted his teeth, urging his legs to move, pulling himself further into the chaos. Stick together, he shouted, trying to keep the fear from his voice. He saw faces, fear etched in every creased forehead and wide-eyed gaze. They were all staring at the exit, a crack of light that promised salvation but remained tantalizingly out of reach. The attendant was still shouting about altitude, but Nathan couldn't hear her over the thundering of his heart. All he felt was the weight of every life they might lose if they didn't act. The flight attendants were scrambling, trying to get control, but their eyes revealed the truth. They were just as scared, just as lost. With a roar of wind, the cabin dipped again, hard. Nathan's stomach churned. He grabbed the hand of the man who had called for help, yanking him towards the exit. We can't wait. We have to go. No, the man protested, panic edging into his voice. This can't be the way. But there was time for debate. Nathan turned to the children huddled near the back, their wide eyes reflecting pure dread. He imagined his own daughter, her laughter echoing through his mind, a reminder of what was at stake. Come on! This way! Nathan gestured to the little ones, willing them to follow, reminding himself they were all in this together. Around them, people scrambled to their feet, hesitating. Shouts echoed, merging into a chaotic, incomprehensible din. A woman near the front of the cabin was screaming for her baby, trapped somewhere amidst the fracas. Each misplaced second felt like a ticking time bomb. "Help her!" Nathan yelled to the nearest passengers. "Everybody! We have to pull together." Finally, the crowd stirred. A few brave souls raced toward the woman, risk merging with urgency. Nathan felt a flicker of hope ignite in his chest. The fragility of their situation hung heavy in the air. Each passing moment could cost them everything. "Get ready." Nathan's voice cut through the air, rising above the chaos. He gathered the remaining people around him as best he could, their eyes wide like deer in headlights. The cabin felt like a live wire, a web of tension, fear, and desperate hope. "Brace yourselves." He counted down in a loud voice, his own heart hammering in rhythm with the staccato beats of gravity pulling at them. 3, 2. The force of the plane's descent sent a bone-jarring lurch through their bodies. With the cabin lights flickering like dying stars, Nathan gritted his teeth. 1. In a frenzy, they surged towards the exits, hands outstretched, the light flickering in their eyes. The door was still locked, the weight of their fears and dreams teetering on the precipice. He pounded on the door with his palm, desperation clawing at him. "Open! Open!" He could feel the air rushing against them, like a siren inviting them to jump into the unknown. "Now!" shrieked the attendant as the cabin shook violently, threatening to toss them all out. Finally, the door gave way, swinging open as though it relished the chaos outside. Freedom, coupled with terror, awaited them, but hesitation gripped Nathan as he glanced into the abyss beyond. What was lurking in that roaring wind? "Go!" he yelled, pushing the nearest passenger through, followed closely by the children, their tiny figures disappearing into the chaos beyond the door. With a final deep breath, Nathan stepped into the unknown, heart pounding louder than the jet engine's roar. Just as he took the leap, a deafening sound shattered the tension, a twist of metal, followed by the screaming cries of those who stayed behind. What nightmare was waiting for them on the other side? Nathan felt the ground disappear beneath him, the air consuming his body, and as he fell, he couldn't shake the sensation that the real fight was just beginning. Nathan felt weightless, suspended between fear and the sudden rush of freedom. The world around him was a cacophony, a fierce blend of shrieking winds and the fading thrum of the plane's engines, now a distant memory. He plunged into the void, time slowing as his mind raced with desperate thoughts. The children, their families, and the woman shouting for her baby. He was not just falling, he was hurtling into the unknown. Wind whipped his face like icy fingers, the taste of adrenaline coursing through his veins, intermingled with the tang of fear. He braced for impact, mentally preparing for the jolt that could shatter bones or silence screams. But as his body collided with a soft surface, surprisingly gentle, he realized he hadn't landed on solid ground. Rolling to his side, he gasped as his lungs filled with air that felt cleaner than he'd ever breathed. He was on a raft. "Over here!" a voice shouted. It was one of the children, the little girl with pigtails, who had been so frightened moments ago. She and a handful of others were clinging to their own inflatable rafts, their faces streaked with uncertainty and the remnants of tears. Nathan scrambled to his feet, scanning the horizon. Above them, the sky was an unnerving mix of gray clouds and splintered sunlight. The ocean below churned violently, waves crashing like a gnashing beast. He could hear the distant wails of survivors who jumped, now scattered in the chaotic sea. "We've got to stick together," he shouted again, waving his arms to rally the group. Hearts beating in synchronized panic, they began to bob in the waves like corks. Nathan tasted salt on his lips, realizing they were alive but at the mercy of a vast, tumultuous ocean. "Where's the plane?" one of the adults cried, frantically scanning the horizon. Nathan turned, dread pooling in his stomach. The wreckage was nowhere to be seen. Their only connection to safety had vanished. "Stay calm," he urged, though he felt his own composure waver. "We just need to." A shriek split the air. Nathan spun to see the girl in pigtails, pointing at a dark shape rising from the depths of the ocean. "What is that?" someone blurted, fear creeping into their voice. The shadows beneath the water shifted, swirling in a rhythm that didn't belong to nature. Nathan's heart raced. Instinct screamed to swim for shore, but they were far from land, and something told him the danger wasn't in the waves. With a sudden surge, the massive form broke the surface, a creature, massive and glistening, towering as tall as a house. It was unlike anything Nathan had ever seen, a fusion of sleek skin and glinting, predatory eyes watching them from the depths. "This isn't happening," Nathan breathed, his mind racing with possibilities. They weren't just fighting for survival against the elements. They were wrestling with something that felt like a nightmare brought to life. "Get back!" someone shouted, panic igniting as the creature thrashed its tail, sending cascades of water crashing into their rafts. Nathan steadied himself, fear sharpening his focus. He had to protect the children at all costs. "Hold on tight," he called, as the creature lunged in their direction, breaking the surface with a roar that echoed through the air. They may have escaped from the plane, but what lay ahead was worse than any descent. What did they truly unleash when they leaped into the unknown? As the waters raged around them, Nathan braced himself for the fight of their lives, the terrifying reality that survival meant facing their darkest fears. Nathan squinted against the crashing waves as the creature arched above them, revealing a maw of serrated teeth that glinted menacingly in the fractured sunlight. Fear squeezed his chest. The children clung to each other, wide-eyed and trembling, small anchors of hope against the impending doom. "Stay together," Nathan shouted, trying to mask his own fear. With adrenaline coursing through him, he paddled furiously, urging the group to move in a direction, any direction, that felt safe. But every time he glanced back, the beast was there crashing down into the water, sending walls of surf toward them. The pigtail girl, still gripping her raft, locked her eyes on Nathan. "What do we do?" she yelled, her voice barely escaping the chaos around them. "Just keep paddling. Don't look back." He wasn't sure about their chances, but he had to give them something to cling to, some glimmer of hope. Each slap of the water against their rafts echoed like a countdown, time ticking away. The creature let out another thunderous roar, shaking the very air around them. "Look out!" a woman shouted, pointing towards the churning waters. Out of nowhere, another dark shape joined the first, a second creature, equally massive and utterly terrifying. Their rocky silhouettes loomed over the children, shadows tearing over their fragile islands of air. "What are they?" someone gasped, their voice breaking. Panic unfolded amongst the group, the kind of frenzy that can break people. Nathan took a deep breath, forcing his mind to churn with answers. "We're not food," he yelled defiantly. The words rang hollow even to his own ears, but he had to rally them. "Just keep moving." Then, just as quickly as they had come, the creatures dubbed beneath the surface, the thrashing of water subsiding into an eerie calm. Silence wrapped around them, thick as fog, broken only by the sporadic cries of other survivors scattered in the sea. "Are they gone?" the girl in pigtails whispered, her voice trembling. Nathan held his breath, straining his senses for even the slightest hint of danger. But moments stretched into an eternity until suddenly, one of the creatures resurfaced, coming up behind them with a swiftness that sent Nathan's heart into a panic. It lunged, aiming toward the cluster of rafts. Water exploded around them, as the tail whipped back and forth, creating monstrous waves that swallowed the air from Nathan's lungs. "Grab on!" he shouted, the warning mixing with an instinctual urgency. The group of survivors was thrown off balance, their rafts colliding in a tumult of splashes and screams. The children cried out, and Nathan watched helplessly as one of the smaller rafts began to drift away. "Help!" A boy's voice rang out, echoing through the growing chaos. "Nathan!" The girl screamed, reaching for him, but water pushed them apart. "No, no, no!" Panic surged through him. He launched himself forward, fighting the waves that crashed over him like a roaring tide. He could feel the icy water lapping at his legs, dragging him down, tugging him closer to the dark fate lurking beneath. Then, a massive shadow fell over him. Nathan turned, feeling the chill of despair grip him. He had to make a choice: go after the drifting raft, or confront the beast looming just beneath the surface, an embodiment of every fear he harbored. "Help!" The cry echoed, desperate and raw. "Don't let go!" he bellowed, his voice breaking as determination fueled every ounce of strength left in him. As Nathan fought the water, desperate to reach the boy, he couldn't shake the instinctive dread the shadow was coming closer. Maybe they unleashed a horror far beyond what any of them had ever imagined. Would he be able to save the children from the monster hunting them? Or was he simply stalling their inevitable fate? As night began to cloister around them, the real torment was just beginning. What waited beneath the foamy surface? Nathan plunged deeper into the icy water, each stroke feeling heavier, like iron shackles binding him to the ocean floor. His heart raced, pounding against the walls of his chest as the murky depths swallowed him whole. He could see the faint glow of the sinking raft, the boy atop it reaching desperately for salvation. "Hold on!" Nathan roared, slicing through the water with renewed vigor. Fear was a two-headed beast gnawing at him, one mouth the fear of the creature hunting them, the other the fear of failing the children. The surface glinted above, distorted by the swell of the sea. He could sense them, the lurking shadows beneath, circling him like vultures. A distant roar echoed through the depths, a warning too late. With one last surge, Nathan surged toward the boy, arm outstretched. Just as his fingers brushed the raft, a deafening crash erupted from below. The water boiled, and something enormous broke the surface. Its milky eyes locked onto Nathan, unblinking, cold. He gasped, choking on the brine, suddenly aware of the reality that could swallow him. "Go! Get out of here!" he shouted hoarsely at the boy, even as the creature arched like a wave, ready to descend. The boy's terrified face blurred away as the beast twisted, creating a whirlpool of foam and fury. In that moment of chaos, Nathan felt a fierce connection, the pull of responsibility, the weight of lives depending on him. Time slowed, and instinct kicked in. He dove deeper, desperate to evade the creature's jaws. His lungs screamed for air, but survival overpowered instinct. He glanced around, hands clawing at the water, searching for anything: an arm, a raft, hope, and then there it was. A small hand reached out from a tangle of despair. The pigtail girl. "Nathan!" she cried, her voice a fragile whisper amidst the tumult. "Please!" He gritted his teeth, propelling himself toward her. She was clinging to a piece of driftwood, the last remnant of their shattered safety. "Nathan!" Her face was pale, eyes wide with terror. It was the reminder of all that was at stake. He grasped the wood, and they locked eyes, each trying to anchor the other against the tide of panic. Just as they braced against the fury of the waves, the creature resurfaced nearby, its jagged teeth like a jagged horizon against the night. It thrashed wildly, splashing rain over them, as it unleashed another ferocious roar, shaking the night air. "Stay close!" Nathan yelled, fighting to keep them afloat. They held onto the piece of wood, hearts pounding as the creature circled like a predator, testing its prey. Sweat dripped down Nathan's brow despite the chill, his mind racing. They needed a plan. Fight or flight. There were no clear choices here, only the raw instinct to survive. Just when Nathan thought things couldn't get worse, the water around them changed. The surface grew restless, bubbling up as if the ocean itself was alive with rage. Their collective breaths were shallow, fear rippling through the group. "Look!" the boy shouted, pointing towards the horizon dimmed by the encroaching night. Light! A flicker, glinting through the darkness, illuminating the chaos just beyond. Was it a boat? A chance at escape? Nathan squinted, the hope igniting something primal within him. "We need to reach it. Come on!" he bellowed, rallying the frightened ones around him. But the creature seemed to sense their newfound determination. It surged forward, fiercely claiming its territory, like a bolt of shadow in the night. Nathan's heart sank as the reality hit him. He was leading them into the jaws of a beast eager for a feast. "Swim!" he commanded, every ounce of his being concentrated on the glistening light, urging his weary limbs to propel him forward toward the flickering hope. As they fought against the waves and the darkness, Nathan felt dread clinging to him, the instincts of survival battling with the overwhelming fear of the unknown. As fierce as the creature was, something deeper lurked in the shadows, something far more dreadful than he could imagine. Was this flickering light their salvation, or merely a bait, leading them straight into doom? They had no choice. They had to move. But the shadow hovered ominously, waiting to strike. The flickering light on the horizon pulsed with a promise of hope. Every wave crashing against Nathan felt like a countdown to either salvation or extinction. He felt it within him, the weight of lives depending on him. This was the moment to confront every fear that had held him captive. He pushed off the driftwood, drawing the pigtail girl along with him like a lifeline, and began to swim toward the distant glow. "Keep your heads up!" he shouted over the chaos, his voice breaking through the tumultuous noise of ocean and creature. Around him, others struggled to follow. Each stroke pushed through the cold, mirroring the adrenaline whirling in his veins. The creature roared in the depths, its ancient anger rippling through the water, sending shivers deep into their bones. Just as Nathan thought they might just touch the edge of survival, he turned around. The massive shadow was gaining speed, surging toward them with a predatory grace. Its eyes glinted like knives in the dark, pulsating waves crashing against the rafts as it struck. "Swim faster," he bellowed, fear clawing at his throat. The pigtail girl clung to his arm, determination flickering in her wide eyes. Nathan could see it behind her was that flickering light, a beacon blaring in the dark, wildly calling for them. With every ounce of strength, he kicked and pushed, urging the children onward. But the ocean howled and surged, pulling at them as it created whirlpools that sought to drag them under. Just ahead, the light shimmered, a guiding star they desperately needed. "Almost there!" the boy shouted, his voice bleeding through the night air. There was something fierce in that shout, something that ignited hope in Nathan's heart. He could feel it, the shared moment of human spirit fighting against the abyss of despair. Nathan glanced back, heart pounding. The creature was rising close, its jaws open wide. Twisting fear mixed with resolve surged within him. "We can't stop! Push!" The words spilled out like fire, igniting the resolve of every survivor around him. As they neared the light, Nathan felt a rush of possibility. The darkness would not take them. They would not be mere victims, shackled by the past. Up ahead, he spotted jagged rocks emerging from the chaos. If they could just reach those rocks, they could escape the creature's reach. With one last burst of energy, Nathan surged forward, feeling the pigtail girl's tiny hand clenching desperately at his. They all reached for the light, hearts synced to the rhythm of their breath, a frantic melody of survival. Each kick splashed against the water, propelling them toward their destiny. Suddenly, the creature lunged with brutal force, a streak of shadow in the night, but Nathan surged ahead, almost as if their hope carried them. "Not today," he shouted, but it was a defiance laced with dread. Their fate still hung precariously in the balance. The water roared, waves crashing fiercely as they reached the rocks. But the moment They clambered onto the jagged surface. A rush of relief flooded over him. They had made it. Above, the moon broke free from the clouds, bathing them in silver light. Panting heavily, Nathan turned to the children. Their faces mirrored his shock and the fragility of victory. They huddled close, terror-stricken but undeniably relieved, and for a brief second, he felt the connection. But just then, a deafening roar broke the calm. The creature had not been deterred. It circled like a tempest, watching with those cold, predatory eyes, and Nathan felt that familiar wave of terror wash over him again. Then, from the corners of the rocks, Nathan saw movement. Fellow survivors had swum to shore, rallying around him, forming a circle of humanity against the abyss. "We have to stand united," he declared, voice ringing clear like a call to arms. With renewed determination, he grabbed hold of the pigtail girl and nodded to the others, feeling the solidarity they shared in that moment. They would face it together, not just as individuals, but as a family forged by fires of adversity. No more running from shadows. No more burden of guilt. Nathan felt ready to fight the darkest fragments of his past, and he could sense the same resolve building in everyone around him. With one final roar, the creature thrashed against the rocks, but they didn't flinch. Nathan stood firm, understanding now that the true battle was not just for survival. It was about confronting every fear that had held him captive, acknowledging every monster he had faced within. As the waves crashed around them, Nathan took a deep breath, eyes locked onto the creature. Fear might loom, but hope burned brighter. "For our lives and for every lost moment," he shouted into the night, igniting a fierce defiance in each of them. And with that, they rushed forward together, prepared to claim their futures no longer defined by fears, but by the strength of their united spirits. You need to subscribe now. Hit that button immediately, so you don't miss our next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help bring more amazing content your way. Don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. What did you think? And you have to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.